This episode is packed full of wedding talks, proposals, and babies. And of course, it gives us hope that Babs will be okay, including video clips showing her progress. If you missed Season 10, Episode 1, I will link the recap video in the cards and the description below so you can catch up on all the latest tea about my big, fat, fabulous life. So let's get into this episode recap. Welcome back to Tea with Trishie. If you are new here, I am so glad you are here. For my returning viewers and subscribers, a big thank you for being a part of my circle of friends. If you are not yet subscribed, what are you waiting for? The episode starts out with Whitney, Glenn, and Hunter on the confessional couch. Whitney shared how the first week after Babs' stroke, sweet Babs was not doing well, and it was the hardest time of their lives. Glenn shares how he didn't want to get up or do anything. He did not want to deal with the possibilities of what he knew were existing. Then about 2 weeks after the stroke, Whitney decided to play some of Babs' favorite music. This is when they saw the proof that music can heal the wounds which medicine cannot touch. Whitney describes Babs' reaction to the sound of her favorite music. Her hand comes up and Babs begins to snap. Glenn gets a big smile on his face as he relives the moment they saw Babs begin to snap her fingers to the music. Glenn adds that Babs even begins to roll her shoulder in this cute little dance move. The joy on Glenn's face as he talks about his sweet wife Babs is heartwarming. With each visit, they started to see new improvements and step towards Babs' comeback, which makes them all very hopeful she will recover. They are excited to go visit her now to see what new things she is accomplishing. It is very encouraging and made me so happy to see it. After the last episode, I was so down seeing that sweet Babs was not recovering and how they were talking about removing her feeding tube and letting her pass. I am so thankful Whitney kept pushing and insisting that she was not going to do that to her mom. Seems the hospital was rushing her along their timeline and not taking into consideration that not only had she just had a stroke, but she had C19 and a UTI. All of them are thankful they had mild cases of C19 and are no longer in quarantine and fully recovered. It has now been just over 2 weeks since Babs' stroke, and she is making major strides in her recovery. When Whitney spoke with the doctor again about rehab, because Babs is now talking some and interacting more, the doctor said she's needed to see this more consistently. Whitney is seeing more and more days of Babs being her old self, but Babs still sometimes does have off days. Whitney continues to push for rehabilitation center. While waiting for the hospital to make the decision if she will now be accepted into rehab, Glenn, Hunter, and Whitney agree that they need to champion behind Babs and keep pushing for some sort of rehab. They begin to make plans to pay out of pocket for rehab, even if she's not accepted into the rehab center and has to go to the nursing home. They are planning to hire a rehab person to go into the nursing home. At this point, she still needs a lot of care due to her feeding tube, so it is not possible for them to care for Babs at home. They are not giving up on Babs and are confident she will continue to improve and recover from this stroke. With Babs showing signs of improving and Glenn and Hunter able to visit her, this allowed Whitney some time to get to filming for her new full-time business, the No BS Active app. While Whitney is getting more good news from her father that Babs is eating well and actually used her spoon and fed herself, which is exciting news of continued progress while waiting for word from the hospital if Babs is going to be accepted into the rehab program, Jessica shares that about a month before Babs' stroke, her family found out that her father Will's tumors had come back. If you remember, Will used to train Whitney, and he is the owner of the gym where Whitney used to train. This is the same gym where Whitney wanted to become a personal trainer for Will. Jessica gets understandably emotional and says they need to stay strong and hope for the best. I am trying to remember if I have seen Will in any of the previews for this season. Have you seen Will in any of the previews, besties? I am hoping Will is okay and fighting the tumor successfully. Jessica surprises Whitney and asks her to be a bridesmaid in her upcoming wedding. Whitney is excited but also concerned because when she was in Heather's wedding, she could not find a dress that would fit her, so she had to have one custom made, and she said she looked like a floating silver orb in all the photos. What came to my mind was a giant disco ball in all of Heather's wedding photos. To make matters worse, she had just gotten a perm before the wedding. Hopefully, now that Heather is divorced, they do not have to look at those photos anymore. Luckily for Whitney, Jessica is being very flexible, and each of the bridesmaids will be in dresses that make them feel beautiful and comfortable. Jessica is so relaxed and chill about things. I love Jessica's vibe. Babs has now been in the hospital for 20 days, and the hospital has finally decided that Babs was accepted into the rehab facility, and the doctor feels she's a good candidate. This is very exciting news. It's a big stepping stone and will help her tremendously towards her rehabilitation. This shows that the hospital is giving Babs a chance to improve so Babs can enjoy the rest of her life. Thankfully, the doctors have finally approved her for rehab and not the nursing home. The rehab is going to be for 3 to 4 weeks, as long as Babs continues to show improvements each week. Whitney shared with us the first video clip of Babs since her stroke, showing Babs giving Glenn a kiss. They are so adorable together. Then Whitney hosts a girls' night with Heather and very pregnant Miss Ashley. This is when we find out that Heather is not physically capable of being the surrogate for Whitney. Heather shares that over the summer while Whitney was in France, she visited her doctor and found out that her body is less than ideal to carry a child for Whitney. Remember last season, Whitney froze some of her eggs in hopes of having a baby? Heather was not planning on having any more children, but also does not like that her body has now made that decision that she probably could not have any more children of her own. I think it's hard knowing you no longer have the option. Ashley expresses her concern about Whitney waiting on the Frenchman because it may be too late one day if she keeps putting her hopes in this Frenchman. During this girls' night, Whitney wants to take over Heather's dating profile and do the swiping for a swipe search. Whitney tells Heather that when looking online for a man, you need to be a little more forgiving or accepting. I completely disagree. Why waste your time on someone who has some red flags waving in their profile? What do you think, besties? Should you lower your standards for people on a dating app? Whitney explains that a swipe search is when everyone is blowing up the app at the same time and the odds of meeting someone doubles. The first person Whitney sees is someone who Whitney says is trying to date her and Heather. But wait, I have questions. So many questions. Didn't Whitney just say in episode 1 that she is still with the Frenchman? Why is she on a dating site if she makes it very clear in episode 1 that she has a boyfriend, the Frenchman? What the heck am I missing here? Does this mean she no longer is with the Frenchman? If she is still with the Frenchman, is she not concerned that he will see this episode and see that she's on a dating site? So many questions. Help me out, besties. Do you know what is going on? Or do you have just as many questions as I do? Heather is so funny. She actually eliminates guys on the dating app based on the name. This one guy's name was Dustin, and she said, nope. I do agree that we should not reject guys based on their name. In this episode, Hunter shares how growing up and dealing with Whitney struggling with her weight and depression, he always felt he had to keep his feelings in and be strong for the family. Even though he was the one who found Babs for both of her strokes and also a seizure, he shares that those images of finding your mother never go away. He admits that sometimes he wants to just break down too, but he continues to be strong for the family. Just before Babs' stroke, he had moved out of his New York place and was moving to Atlanta. But now he's not so sure what he should do. On Babs' 22nd day after her stroke, the rehab center contacts Glenn, and they are preparing to move Babs to rehab. This rehab center is what they needed. Glenn says they still have a long road ahead of them, and Glenn was not planning on retiring fully, but due to the situation with Babs, he may determine if he needs to retire completely and allow Babs to be his full-time job. He is 76, way beyond full retirement age. For now, he has agreed to stay away from the office and will decide in the next few weeks if he will retire fully. The final scene before the cliffhangers, Glenn comes by Whitney's home and shares some more videos of Babs playing air guitar so sweetly. Glenn is still not decided on full retirement. He's hopeful that Babs will make a full recovery, in which case she would not need him home full time, so he could possibly only partially retire. Then we get to the cliffhangers, showing all the friends outside of the rehab center wishing Babs well, holding up their signs. And then we see Glenn walking in on Whitney in bed with who? Lenny. Oh my, can't wait until next week. Looking like the Frenchman is out of the picture. Until then, besties, let's keep sipping some tea in one of these videos. I'll see you there.